Welcome back, those of you who are online joining us. I want to give a physical sort of introduction to what we're going to see here. So this is the thing that we saw the picture of earlier. That's easy to recognize. There's a camera on the wall above, so if be careful about, I don't mind if you guys walk around, if you want to walk to the other side of the machine and watch while things are happening, that's fine. Be careful about getting in line with the camera there. I don't mind if you do, but you may not want people looking at the back of your head for 45 minutes. So I'm going to run this, as I said before, from my iPad. So no magic here. I'm just using this as a thin client. I'm shadowing this to this screen. So you guys will be able to see what I'm seeing as I flip through screens in my HMI here. That will be updated over there. Let me pause for a second and talk about what we're doing here. So that we can simulcast this, we're using a tool from Longwatch called Console Recorder. So you're probably familiar with a DVR that would record video, so we can record the video coming out of that camera that's on the wall there. We can also record what's displayed on this screen. So we can take the output of this screen and treat it as if it were a camera feed and record that. So that's what we're using. We're not recording it, but we're live streaming this on the simulcast so that other people can see, the people online can see what's happening on the iPad. So that's a Longwatch technology we're using called Console Recorder. So if this was a multi-monitor, in fact, we're going to be using these two monitors. This is the material handler's iPad. He's going to get some notifications there. So the cameras, the technology we're using to live stream this, both from the cameras and from the PCs, is a Longwatch technology. So the front end of this machine is what we call cap processing. By the way, I'm going to go off script and say it's okay to ask me questions. So probably can't field 50 questions, but I can field some questions. So if anywhere along the way you say, hold on, I missed the connection between those two things, wave your hand and we'll pause for questions. This end of the machine is cap processing. It functions independent of any orders that you have going on. So let me take a moment and show you a couple of the screens that I have in my HMI. This is a screen we call Cap Zone 1. It represents these two modules, cap distributing and cap separating. The next screen is the next two modules, which we call cap processing and cap handling. The main screen that we spend a lot of time on is the filler screen. So that is, the green background tells me the filler is sitting there in automatic mode, waiting for a work order so that it can do something. I have a packaging screen, that was boring, and I have an ASRS, automated storage and retrieval screen, which shows me what's in the warehouse here, as it were. So the shadow capability we're using AirPlay from Apple, and it occasionally will wig out. So I'll ask the InSource people to wave at me if you notice that. Let's see, it looks like it's still working. So for now, we're okay. So I'm going to start the cap processing business. So I'm just changing some I/O and starting things up. Cap processing is independent of any work order. So this is just a FIFO buffer. It's going to fill up with cap, no matter whether there's an order or not. It just puts a cap in the filler, waiting for the filler to request that it be put on a bottle. So there's no order dispatch. So if we go back to the filler screen, filler's not doing anything. It's idling, sitting in auto, waiting for something to do. There are a couple of interesting sensors down here. So this station has a light sensor which actually measures distance and can sense the orientation of the cap. So if the cap is put in the magazine upside down, that cap gets rejected. That's what just happened there. This cap was upside down, so the system rejects it. So we could track that as a downtime event. We're not doing that today, but we could track that as a downtime event or as a quality miss. So there's another cap that's upside down. We'll see that get rejected. Caps that are oriented the right way go to the processing operation, and in this operation, we deburr the caps. So the cap gets to position 3. You'll see the grinder turns on, it moves up and down. That's a deburring operation. You don't see a lot of plastic flying off of that thing, but trust me, it's deburring. And then the handling system picks that up and it waits for a work order so that it can place that on a cap. So let's do that now. A screen I didn't show earlier is the MES screen. So I showed a list of work orders earlier that I need to act on today. These work orders are in the MES system. They were generated from the ERP and pushed down into the MES system. And this is the list of work orders I need to work on today in order. So I need to do work order number 704 next. That's SPS with no dash tells me that's regular popcorn. And notice this area here, the next production area is blank. So I'm going to say select that work order. Maybe I didn't get my button push. That will stage that work order as the next one that needs to be produced. All right, so I've got 704 as the next work order I need to produce, and I hit the Start Next Production button. It's going to make 2 trays of regular popcorn. And the bottles, there's 2 types of bottles we have here. Blue label bottles are designed for liquid materials. Black label bottles are designed for solid materials, popcorn. Each bottle has under the label an RFID tag. So we do 2 things with that RFID tag. We check the bottle type. So when we open the gate and kick a bottle out, we check that that's the right type of bottle. We just had a problem. Notice that in the alarm banner here, I get an alarm that says wrong bottle type. So let me walk over here and fix that. Somebody staged the wrong bottles in here, and we had a failure. So I'm going to fix that. And we're going to see in a minute that that creates a downtime event. The machine's down. Why is the machine down? It's down because we had the wrong kind of bottles. So there's no need for me to tell the system that that happened because it knows it. So I'm going to acknowledge that alarm. That wrong bottle type needs to go away before I can start it again. Start. Okay, so now the system's going to take off again and continue making the 6 bottles that will make up 1 tray. Okay, so in addition to the checking the bottle type, we write back to the RFID tag on this bottle the work order number that we made this for. So after we fill the bottle up, there's 6 bottles in there now, so that tray is almost done. After we fill the bottle up, we write back the date and time this bottle was filled, what work order it was filled for, and what tray position it's going to end up in. So when we create work orders, we don't create orders for a certain number of bottles. We create the order for a certain number of trays. Each tray has 6 bottles. So on the RFID label, we'd be able to pick up anything in inventory and know whether it was in position 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 in this tray. The tray, there's 2 interesting things that happen with the tray. In the tray fill position, there are 2 cameras. The first camera is a quality check that makes sure that this tray is actually empty, so we don't attempt to put bottles on top of bottles. So it can easily distinguish, the camera can easily distinguish the difference in contrast between the all-black tray and the white cap. So if it sees white caps, it'll just put that tray back in storage and it'll mark it as questionable because it doesn't know, it thought that tray was empty, but it wasn't. The second camera actually decodes this data matrix code that's on the tray. It strips out the tray number, and we record that back into our MES system. So we record that whatever, we're making work order number 704 right now. We record that ends up in tray 7 or 6 or 5, whatever tray number it ends up in. So that's one way that we use the information that the cameras are creating for us. So now it's going to make the second tray of this order. And it's going to pick up that tray that we just made and put it in the warehouse. So far, this is just everyday routine normal stuff. We haven't gone through the changeover process yet. So that'll finish filling those bottles. I want to bring your attention to this MES screen one more time. So interesting things to note are this area that says work items 0. This is an indication from the workflow system. So when I have a task to do from workflow, this number increments. So I've got 0 tasks now. I could have 1, 2, 3, 4, or any number of tasks that I need to act on in the MES system, or sorry, in the workflow system. Also, when I select another kind of material, if I switch material types, the system will recognize that and it'll add another button to this screen. So under the inventory button, we'll see a button that says Start Changeover. So I want to let this get most of the way through what it's doing here before I switch order types on it. Any questions from what we've seen so far? So let me pause and talk about the technology for just a minute. So we talked about our MES system. We talked about the fact that we're recording data physically to the bottle, but also in the software. So we can go say, I want to see the information for work order number 702. It would tell us which trays that ended up in, when it was made, what order it was destined for, or what customer it was destined for. We also can pick up a bottle and read the RFID tag and say, oh, that was made for order number 704 or 711, whatever order number that was made for. So far, we have, without knowing it, we've invoked MES performance because we had a machine event that should be tracked. We'll take a look at that in just a minute. We haven't yet invoked workflow, but we're going to do that now. So I'm going to move on to order number 711. I'm going to select that work order. The system recognizes that I'm changing material types, so it brings up a new button that says Start Changeover. So I'm going to do that. All right, I get more data now on my MES screen that's targeted to the changeover process. So I get a countdown timer that tells me this should be done in 10 minutes. So the timer is going to start counting down from 10 minutes now. It gives me, when did we start? 9:54:53. That means we should be done at 10:04:53. So I've got some action to take. And notice that my work items went from 0 to 1. So directly in the HMI now, I'm going to click on the work items and bring up the things that I need to take action on. It needs to refresh. So it shows 3 items, but it needs to refresh. So there's a workflow in action now called product changeover. And the subject says material request form. So I'm going to double click that. That's going to bring up a form that I need to fill out, really to let the material handler know that we're in a changeover and I'm going to need him to take some action for me. So it has some information about, do I need caps, do I need bottles? So I can embed that in the HMI. That's what we see here. I could also run that as a native iOS app. So I'm going to get out of the HMI and show you the native iOS app for that. So back to the home screen of my iPad. I've got an application here called Work Tasks. It has a 1, meaning there's one thing I need to do. So I'm going to launch this same form from here. Either way, whatever works best for you. So the form now allows me to specify I need caps, I need bottles. I'm okay on trays. I don't need any trays, but I do need a different kind of fill material. I need solid material red. That's red popcorn. And it allows me to specify the quantity that I need. Remember, this is our form built for this scenario. Forms can look like and be like whatever you want them to be. They don't have to be this way. So I'm going to finish communicating to the material handler that I need 12 of all these things. And I'm going to make a note here. So I could put freehand notes in here. I just made a note to Michael, my material handler, that we're on the timer here, so he needs to hurry. So I'm going to send the material request. I'll get a notification that that was successfully submitted. Within 30 seconds or so, Michael, as the material handler, will get a notification. So his iPad Work Task app, we're going to see a little 1 pop up here. So the workflow is going to be sent to him at this point, and he takes the action next. So let me describe that our workflow has me take some action, and then it bounces to him, and he takes some action, and then it comes back to me for some final action. So that form that I filled out, he gets that same form, and the form grows. There's more information for him to fill out now. So that form goes from me to him and then back to me to take final action. So Michael, you're up. So he's going to launch the same Work Task app. By the way, he doesn't have a mic, so that the remote audience knows what's going on, I'll talk for him. So launch that material request form, Michael. I'm going to bring back up the HMI so I can keep an eye on the timer. Okay, so Now he has a read-only view of the data that I completed in the form. So we don't want him to change what I requested. We just want him to act on those things. So as the material handler, it's especially to establish genealogy, it's important for him to make a note of the lot number that he's taking these materials from. So he's going to pick a lot number for caps, and he's going to pick a lot number for bottles, and he's going to pick a lot number for the red popcorn that he's going to bring to the production line. So we're not focused on genealogy in this presentation, but we're supporting that here as well. So the form allows him to populate those things. A difference in this workflow tool and in a workflow tool you might use at your organization for expense report approval is we've got connectivity to the plant floor. So when he populates these lot numbers, we can write that back into the control system and say, here are the lot numbers we're consuming for this work order. So eventually he'll get through this form just as a demonstration. He's already signed in. That's how it knew that he had an action to take. But we require an authentication step here. So Michael's going to log in with credentials. So that is an opportunity for us to validate that the person who did this at the very least knew the credentials. Hopefully it was Michael, but at the very least the person knew the credentials. So he's going to put in that username and password, and if he filled everything out correctly, he's going to, yep. So his work task is gone. Notice on the HMI for me, I've got another work task again. I went from 0 count back to 1. So the workflow bounced this back to me, and it's going to take, so I've got an SOP now. So if I launch the SOP, what I'll have is, I'll scroll up so you can see that this is the same form. I'm just adding content every time the form moves around. It shows the lot numbers for all the materials. But it gives me a checklist of things I need to do now to prep the machine for the next work order. So I'm going to put the iPad in the holder thing here and come to the other side of the machine to run through this. All right, so the SOP tells me change the filler to manual mode. So I'm going to switch and use this HMI to do that. So I hit the manual button, the background goes to yellow. That tells me the machine's in manual mode now. So I can say I'm done. Disconnect the corn chute. So I'm going to pull the corn chute off. By the way, the reason to have a checklist like this is because you need to make sure you reconnect the corn chute eventually, or you'll have a big mess, and I can describe in detail what that looks like if you guys want to know. So disconnect the corn chute. I need to empty the corn. I'm going to use this portable vessel for corn emptying. So I've got a button here that says empty hopper. I just hold my finger on this. Michael, we got 3 minutes to go, my friend. I'm afraid we're not going to make it.
Hurry.
Somebody overfilled the hopper. Notice I looked at you when I said that. Okay, we're very close here. Yeah, seems like we're empty. All right, so empty corn, that's done. Reconnect corn chute, that's a very important step. Okay, I did that. All right, load new corn. Michael nicely provided that in easy to dump containers. All right, new corn loaded. Capture waste amount. So I think we wasted 4 bottles worth. So that's captured. So by the way, this is data that we can log now. We could write this to a database. We could record it to a historian, whatever we want to do with it, because our workflow tool has a connection to the automation system. And then finally put the filler back in automatic mode. That's the last step. Change filler to automatic mode. So we're nearly done, but I need to make some notes to Michael. please bring me only plain popcorn with no husks. All right. So I want to pause for a minute and think about the tools we're using here and the people process implications. So workflow is a tool, there are others, but it's a tool that could be used to catalog some of this tribal knowledge that you have. So the exact steps and the exact decision process for how do I make this thing happen? The good news about putting it into the workflow product is that then we can put it into runtime. We can execute that. We can push the button and say, start this flow for me. It's also a tool that allows me to engage others. And as I mentioned before, that engagement could be by the app that Michael used on his iPad. It could be by email or text. And the system is smart enough to be able to consume information coming back in. So if we sent Michael a text message, he could send one back and say, I'm done. And the system could parse that text message and take some action based on what he responds with. So lots of options for interaction here with how exactly do you deploy the workflow. So from a people process perspective, workflow is one of the best tools we have for, I'm talking too long. Workflow is one of the best tools we have to engage people and to automate processes. So it's an important part of our changeover, but notice that my iPad tells me now that I've exceeded the changeover standard. And now, instead of counting down, it's counting up and it turned red. So this is probably going to end badly for me because I'm the operator. I didn't make this happen in time. But in any event, it is what it is. So I'm going to end the changeover and I'm going to start the production. It's going to start filling these bottles with the red popcorn. And while that's happening, you guys have seen the filling happen before. So while that's happening, I want to switch gears and talk about events. So notice the
changeover event?
Yeah.
Which exceeded the time?
Uh-oh.
So a couple things we need to do. We said that we are going to be very disciplined in following our changeover standards. Do you have that handy?
Yeah. So as a tool, I have Site-Based 360, we talked about over in the setup here. It allows me to go look for standards that have been created for the work that I might do. One of the standards is a changeover standard. So directly from the HMI, I can launch that standard. It's a PDF built in this tool. Maybe I didn't click. And it's a pictorial representation of the steps that I need to go through to do this changeover.
So I'll let you get back to the demonstration. Two things. Tomorrow morning's production meeting, we need to review the standard, A.
Okay.
You have a training matrix in there. I want to check and make sure Michael's been trained to that standard.
Yeah.
B, and oh, by the way, that was more than 4 bottles of waste.
Well, we estimate waste.
Well, you estimated poorly according to the other alert I have.
Okay. So here's what a procedure document looks like as a PDF launched from directly within the HMI. This is a web-based tool, so you can, anywhere you can get to a browser, you can get to this thing. So Rob distracted me. We were talking about events. So the system captured 2 events for me, which is exactly what I would have expected. It captured a changeover event, which lasted exactly 10 minutes. That's the threshold for which we want to get changeover done. It captured an event that lasted 57 seconds that says changeover exceeded. So from a reporting perspective, by the way, I'm going to add some additional context to this event. So I select the event, I hit this button. It allows me to select from a list of pre-configured choices. So I can assign some root cause to why this happened. So I'm going to say that the root cause of the changeover exceeds was a material delivery problem. And I can add some comments here. I won't add a lot of comments. I'm just going to put initials. Okay. All right. Okay. So this is an example now of event tracking. So we tracked changeover as an event. So in the future, I can look backwards at time and see a summary of all events that had this state. Or I can have a summary of all events that had this reason. And by the way, for simplicity, we're doing this at 2 levels. We're saying it's changeover and the exact reason. It can be multiple levels deep. This could be 5 or 6 levels deep if you wanted to do that. I caution you that going too deep makes the data more difficult to manage and understand. But in any event, this is configurable. You can have more levels than that if you want. Since we're connected to the I/O, we can see that the machine is running or not running, and we can check changeover as a discrete event. So that's how we're using performance, MES performance, the Wonderware tool in this scenario. I want to switch gears and show you one more thing. So in the intro earlier, I said we were going to talk about Smart Glance. So I've got an icon on here. Let me launch Smart Glance. When I bring this up, it gives me 2 choices. It says I can go look at Historian or I can look at Area 50. These are configurable. You label these things whatever you want them to be, and you put whatever data inside them you want to put. I'm historizing 2 pieces of information that I might want to get access to outside the building. So, by the way, this is a cloud-based tool. So it takes data from my historian, it mines that data, pushes it up to the cloud. So I don't have to be inside this building to get to this data. I can do this from my home or the airplane or wherever I am. I can see data being pulled out of the historian. And if I click on any of these things, I can see a trend of that data. So what I clicked on here is the tank level. So we've got our process automation station, which is doing some heating and pumping fluid around in a circle. We've got that running and simulating some usage. So we see the tank level going up and down. And if I rotate the iPad, that trend gets bigger, and I can drill in on specific time frames. So we're looking at an hour now. We're looking from 10 o'clock back to 9, roughly. I can zoom in and say I only want to look at the last half hour, or I can keep zooming in. I only want to look at the last 6 minutes. So Smart Glance is a tool that allows me to selectively push data out to the cloud and access it by my mobile device, either iPad, iPhone, other smartphone device. Gives me access to this information at my fingertips. So we used, as an example, this is tank level. Maybe what would be more interesting to look at is bottle count. So I can take a look at, what has the trend of bottle count looked like over time. So in the last few minutes, I made 12 bottles. That's the ramp of this bottle count line going up. So it went from 832 up to 844. That's the 12 bottles I just made. So this tool is highly configurable. Publish whatever you want to publish. And by the way, I've been saying cloud, cloud, cloud. There is an on-prem version. So if you're sensitive about the data and you're not comfortable pushing it to the cloud, you can stand up a server and host this information in your environment. The downside to that is you can only access that from wherever you can access your production environment. But the plus side is you're not pushing data to the cloud if you're not comfortable with that. So that's what I wanted to show you guys in terms of technology. We've got time for questions if anybody has any.